Here are some of Joe Rogan's scariest stories from his podcast.
I dodged 2 molestation attempts.
Really?
Yeah, 2.
What'd you dodge?
Well, I dodged one of them when I probably was like 7 or 8 years old. That was the scary. Well, they were both pretty scary, but that was the scarier one because I was at the library and I was by myself. You know, I was a latchkey kid. My parents just let me out of the house, which, you know, at the time was kind of normal. In retrospect, like thinking about it now, like I couldn't imagine letting my 7-year-old just fucking
library.
wander around. Not just that, but walk to the public library, you know, in San Francisco. And this guy, I was looking at, I was always into like horror movies and monster movies and shit.
Yeah.
And so I was reading these books they had a section of like, you know, monster books.
Yeah.
And this guy came up to me and he goes, do you like monster books? I go, yeah. And he goes, oh, I have some monster books in my car. You want to see them? I'm
No.
like, okay. Like, I didn't know any better. I was fucking 8 years old or whatever it was. And as I'm leaving with this guy, the librarian starts screaming, Joseph, you get away from that man. You know, like, that man just got out of jail. And she yells at him to get out of there, and the guy runs away, and I just started crying, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I dodged that bullet. And then another time, when I was 13, we were hanging around this lake in Jamaica Plain. It was Jamaica Pond was this place we would go and fish. And there was another pond that was like this neighboring pond that was like slightly smaller. And this guy was always like running around the lake. He was jogging. And me and my friend Josh would be hanging out. This guy would come over and talk to us. You know, he seemed like a super normal guy. He used to be a teacher and he had retired. And, you know, he probably was like in his 60s. And then one day, it's just me.
He went for it.
One day, it's just me. And I'm fishing and he comes by and he's drunk.
Damn.
And he tells me he loves me, and I'm like super confused.
How old were you?
13.
Okay.
And I had been talking to this guy on and off. I had seen him, you know, for months.
Yeah.
Like he'd come by, say hi. It was always like casual, very good humored, very friendly, but he was like setting us up. And he comes by, and then I realize after, he tells me he loves me, but there can be no love without sex. That's what he says. And I'm like, what? And I had a knife. So I remember, like, I grabbed my knife in my pocket, and I had my hand on my knife, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to stab this guy.
Damn.
Yeah. I was like, this is going to, because there was no one around. There was no one around.
Wow.
It was just trees and
You were 13,
forest.
you were like, I'm going to have to stab.
Oh, I was going to cut this guy.
I would have trusted the guy. I would have been like, yeah, you're right.
You're smarter than me.
I'll see you later. I don't know what.
It was dangerous.
Dad was murdered in May of 1999. He had answered a personals ad for a woman who was looking for a boyfriend, and the ad was headlined Kismet. I believe that's the Arab word for fate. And Dad met with her. Her name was Rita. She was a lawyer. She had worked in the prison system in the Midwest. And Dad was really, really taken with her. She was really bright and really smart. And she had an ex-husband who had sexually abused her daughter from a different marriage. And they were pressing charges against this ex-husband, and he was going to go to prison. And she had met him while he was in prison, and she was doing legal work. And she had helped him get out of prison. So she helped him get out of prison. She'd married him. He had abused her daughter. She divorced him. She was prosecuting him to send him back to prison. Then she met my father. And this ex-husband had said that if he ever caught her with another man, he would kill them both. So my father was going to pick her up, and she was going to stay at his house in the mountains until the time of the trial. And as he was going to pick her up, he was going down this mountain road on his property, and a giant boulder broke free, and it rolled down the hillside, and it blocked the road. He couldn't get out. So he spent the day with this a lever, forcing this boulder off the road. And then he took a couple extra hours and he made a sign that said Kismet Rock so that he could label this boulder as a kind of landmark for when he brought her back to sequester her. And he'd cleaned the house incredibly. The house was just neat as a pin and stocked with all this food. And, you know, he really planned to have this fantastically sort of idyllic time sequestered with his new girlfriend. And he labeled the rock to surprise her. And then he went to pick her up. And when he went to pick her up, the ex-husband showed up. And he shot my father. And my father and the woman took refuge in her house. And the man set fire to the house. And the house eventually collapsed. And the coroner says that they were both dead before the fire got to them. And the coroner says that because of the angle of the shot, my father probably took about 20 minutes to die because the bullet ruptured his diaphragm. So with every breath, he would have been accumulating air between the lung and the diaphragm. And so every breath would have been more and more shallow because his lungs would have been more and more constricted by this air above the diaphragm. But that eventually he'd suffocated. And all of this sounds horrible and tragic, but it forms this fantastic pattern in my father's life because my father, when he was very small, he lived in northern Idaho with this enormous Ukrainian family. And his father went crazy one day. This is all public record. I've talked about this a lot. But his father took a rifle and walked around the house and tried to kill him, my father, and ultimately killed killed his wife, my father's mother, and then killed himself. But my father's earliest memories are of hiding underneath a bed as his father walked around the house in logging boots with a rifle, calling his name, trying to get him to come out so that he could be killed.
Jesus Christ.
And so my father spent his entire life sort of looking for his mother because as his father was trying to kill him, he was trying to find his mother, who at that point had been killed. And so my father really had this kind of serial pattern with women. He was always looking, in a way, for the woman. And ultimately, he was shot by the man with a gun in the way that he would have been shot when he was 4 years old. And one of the uncanny things is that their bodies were only preserved because a bed on the second floor of this structure, as it was burning, the bed fell over their bodies and insulated their bodies. And my father had escaped his father by hiding underneath a bed when he was a small child. And the fact that the Lonely Hearts ad was headlined Kismet, and the fact that this boulder rolled down in front of my father's car just as he was leaving,
that prevented him from getting there in time where he probably would have been able to escape before the ex-boyfriend arrived.
Or I don't know, there's so many odd, bizarre coincidences and synchronicities. You know, you would have to really dismiss a lot of things in order to make this not something significant.
Not fate, or not some reoccurring theme woven into time.
And in a way that, you know, understanding all these different aspects of it, it provides a comfort that it doesn't seem like this random thing. It seems like something that some aspect of my father's life that was coming full circle and was finally being completed. And maybe I am clutching at straws and I'm just a kind of person looking for significance, which is what we all are. But I'll take comfort where I can find it.
Yeah, that's the thing with some of these places. It's not necessarily like, immediately you're just like, oh yeah, this is spiritual energy or whatever like that. But it's just heavy, or it's just like you feel off when you go into these places. Like as soon as you stepped into the Conjuring house. Have you ever seen the Conjuring movies?
Yes.
So they're actually based on a real house in Rhode Island, And that was one of those places that we had walked into, and you were like almost getting nauseous.
I almost threw up, and I'm not. So what's interesting about the paranormal and what we've learned the past 4 years is that it affects people differently. Some people can see stuff. Some people claim they're mediums and can communicate more. I feel like I have more of like an empathic, like almost like I just feel worse like whenever there's something around. And so when we first
Is that the house?
That's
Yeah,
it.
it's
Cool
creepy. It's an amazing house.
The state that launched the Conjuring universe.
There we go. So the most famous we'll get to, but like it's built on the same grounds that the King Philip's War was fought on, like right at the beginning of the United States and everything. So the main people that haunt that are like 7 dead soldiers that this little girl always kept seeing in the walls, and thus it started manifesting more to the entire family. So this family called the Perrin family bought the place in like I think 1972, and for 10 years they said they would see, you know, these figures, these soldiers walking around, like their beds would shake, they would get scratches every single day, you know, furniture would move, all these sort of things. She was getting like really rash with everything, so she brought in these demonologists who were
Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Ed and Lorraine
if you've heard of
Warren.
them before.
No.
They're like the demonologists, the paranormal investigators. They are like the fathers of it all.
Yeah.
Maybe I have heard of them. Are they featured in the Zach Bagan
Yes.
Museum?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's where I've heard of them.
Yeah, which is also a crazy place.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. But yeah, so anyway.
I just went.
Really?
You just
I
went?
just went a couple weeks ago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, my daughter dragged me to that too.
Hey, there we go. Vegas. Yeah, so they were doing this like exorcism, and
That's them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's those folks. Okay.
And
so they do an exorcism there.
they were doing an exorcism, and she was actually thrown like across the
Levitated
entire like room and smashed into a wall to where she had injuries, and they were so angry about that they actually kicked out the
They
demonologist.
punched Ed in the face.
Yeah, they punched that guy in the face because they thought he was the guy that was like making it worse, but I think it just like pissed him off. And so that thing,
When you
is-
say they punched him in the face, you mean the ghost punched him in
oh
the
no
face?
no the Perrin
The
family,
dad,
sorry.
the dad did. Or
Oh,
something,
okay.
yeah.
The
I was
Perrin
like, what?
family was like
They're getting assaulted?
the Perrin family, yeah, was like really
They punched
upset.
him in the face because he thought that he threw the wife across the room? Or
Yeah.
he was
He
responsible
thought
for it?
they made it, or he was there, and like the exorcism that he was conducting made it more angry, which in turn hurt his wife.
Oh, so he got angry.
He was like,
but
"Stop
you
doing this."
Brought him
Punched
in.
him.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly,
It's like
yeah.
hiring a priest
Sell
and
the
then
house,
punching
bro.
a priest.
Right,
It's like-
right.
Move.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
the fuck is wrong with
Move
you?
down the street.
Punching people.
Come on.
So
That's an interesting thing, right? Like, because that's in a lot of these cases. They feel like it's not just ghosts, but it's ghosts that are being controlled by some sort of a demonic entity.
Right.
And the demonic entity keeps these ghosts there, which is like another layer of belief you have to
Right.
have. Like,
Exactly.
you don't just believe that maybe when people die, their energy gets left behind, and then maybe that energy gets controlled by demons.
Exactly.
It's like, oh my God.
It's
now
like
we're
another level.
We're so into crazy now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm willing to go there.
It gets meta. It gets very meta.
But if you did encounter a demon, nobody would fucking believe you. And then
hell
you would
no.
be trapped. You would be this person who for the rest of your life, oh, there goes Bob and his fucking demon stories.
Yeah.
Like no one would buy it. But
exactly. Same
if-
thing with aliens or
Right.
anything. Like
Yeah,
anything you
right.
see that are outside of this like logical
Physical world.
normal daily encounters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that, Bigfoot, anything. Anything where you see things. We were talking before, there's so much to talk about, but we were talking before, and you were saying that over the last year, you almost died because you had some crazy internal, you had an aneurysm in your pancreas. Is that what you said it was?
Yeah, I had an undiagnosed asymptomatic aneurysm, which is a sort of ballooning in the blood vessel in the artery, in my pancreatic artery. And out of the blue, it was a congenital thing. Like I apparently had developed during my whole life. It was just from a structural problem. And one afternoon, one beautiful June afternoon last year, it burst. And I just felt this pain shoot through my stomach. I was like, damn, what is that? And within a few minutes, I couldn't stand up. And within about 10 minutes, I was starting to go blind. And my wife called the ambulance, and those guys got there, and I was tanking really fast. And the hospital is an hour away. And by a miracle, I don't even think the doctors understand it, but by a miracle, I was still alive when I got to the hospital. I lost 90% of my blood into my abdomen. I didn't know I was dying, but I was dying, and I was right in that sort of twilight zone. And a black pit opened up underneath me, and I felt myself starting to get pulled down into it, and I didn't want to go. Like, it was cold and dark and black and bottomless, and I just knew, like, do not go down there. I was getting pulled down into it, and right at that moment, my father, who passed away in 2012, my father sort of appeared next to me and started trying to communicate with me and comforting me. And I sort of waved him away, and the last thing I remember saying to the doctor, I was sort of losing consciousness, and the last thing I said to the doctor was, "You're losing me right now, you gotta hurry." He was trying to he'd cut my neck open, he was trying to put a line into my neck to, they pumped 10 units of blood into me, and that's what brought me back. It was really close.
When you say you felt like you were sinking into a pit, like, were you seeing this?
I mean, your perceptions are very weird because very little oxygen in the brain. I had a hemoglobin count of 1.2. If you're a doctor, you know what that is. It's almost unheard of. And so I just felt this pit underneath me, and it was pulling me into it, and I didn't want to go.
And you can see a pit?
Again, see/feel. Your perceptions are very weird when you're like that. And then my father also was sort of floating above me. He was a presence. I don't know if seeing him is quite the word. It's another perception.
Wow.
Yeah.
So coming out of that, once you regained your health, you must have had an incredible newfound appreciation for all the people in your life and just everything.
It was a long path. I'm a really healthy guy. Later, the doctor said, I was a marathon runner when I was young, and I don't drink. I'm athletic, and I use my body pretty vigorously. And he said that saved your life. Like, you didn't have a heart attack. Like, you owe your life to that. And,
oh, wow.
But the next morning, I didn't know that I'd almost died. I had no idea. I have two little girls. I have a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and they're the most precious things to me. I can't even describe it, obviously. And the fact that they almost lost their dad was just devastating when the ICU nurse came in and said, "How are you doing, Mr. Younger? You're one lucky guy. You almost died yesterday." I had no idea. And then she came back an hour later, and she said, "How are you doing?" And I said, physically, I was throwing up blood. I was not doing very well physically, but I said I was. I said, "But I'm really struggling with what you told me, and it's really terrifying. I didn't know." And I said, "I almost died in my own driveway in front of my family, and I didn't even know." And I said, "I keep thinking about it. I can't stop." And she said, one of the wisest things I've ever heard. She said, "Stop thinking of that moment as scary and start thinking of it as sacred." And she didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. And the next 5 days in the ICU, I thought about the word sacred and what the experience was now giving me access to. And, not to sound sort of like trite, but life is a friggin' miracle. And, I'm not religious, whatever. I don't think few of us, I certainly didn't quite understand what a miracle it is that we're alive, that we exist, that we draw breath, that we can think about ourselves, that we're here for even one day is a freaking miracle. And you can forget that because your life gets busy. And all of a sudden, I feel like life was sort of returned to me, meaning that I understood how sacred it is.
After Romania, went to the Ukraine, and that was probably one of our most terrifying experiences because in Odessa, there is this giant labyrinth of catacombs underneath the city. And it's basically like a mine. They used all the limestone from underneath to build the entire city of Odessa in Ukraine. But we had some near and run-ins of almost dying down there. Obviously you shouldn't go into the catacombs alone, but this is one of our exploring videos. And oh my God, the story is crazy. We met this random guy who was going to take us in because our original guide like broke his hand the night before, and he was like, "Oh, trust this dude. He's done it before. You should just go in the catacombs with this guy." We're like, "What?"
So stupid.
He spoke broken English. Like,
We did it.
Great.
barely know him.
We did it.
We're like, "All right. I mean, we need to get a video. Let's go. Like, why not?" Oh my god. So we're diving deep into this place, and he turns to us at one point, and he said, "Do you guys know how to get out?" And I was like, I mean, maybe. He's like, "No, you don't. If I leave you right now, you would die." And he just looks at us, and we're like, please don't. And he's like, "I want to test something. I'm going to go over there. This is a circle. You guys got to find your way back over to me, but I'm going to leave you alone." And so we're like,
This is like a labyrinth, too.
this is a giant labyrinth. I don't know if you've ever seen like catacombs.
So this guy has this shit all memorized?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going in things that look like that the entire time. And he asks us to go in like basically a figure eight.
That's him right there in
guy.
the blue.
And he was like, "Find me. And if you don't find me, like if I wanted to, I could leave." I mean, he was a nice guy. He wouldn't do it. But at that
He's just
point,
letting you know.
we
how fucked
we
it is.
realized at that point, oh god, like we could die right now. It was just absolutely terrifying. That all those markings on a wall was apparently a story of a guy that got trapped in there and kept seeing that like figure, that little shadow figure on the wall, and so he went crazy and wrote a ton of different things.
Oh, Jesus.
But what was really, really insane, I don't know exactly where this is in the video, so I'd show you, but he turns to us as we go and says, "Hey, let me walk ahead of you for this section." Like, all right, why? And he was like, "Because last week I almost got bombed here." And I was like, what does that mean? He was like, "Yeah, so me and the other guides that take people down here in this catacombs, we don't like each other, and we don't like sharing clients. So if I was able to, like kill off all the other people that were down here, then I'd get all the clientele." And I was like, what are we in here? Like, we've already been with this guy for 2 hours. And he turns, he's like, "Let me show you something." He goes behind this rock, pulls out a bomb,
Like a pipe bomb.
like
a little thing.
with like a fuse on it, and it was like, "I found this because I almost triggered this 4 days ago, and this would have killed me instantly. And if this would have got that thing,
Yeah.
and it was booby trapped up there." And he said, if you guys trigger those, the walls are caving in, and we're all gonna die." Like, and he was being 100% serious, and we
So
were like,
nonchalant
we
about
thought
it.
we were like, "No way, that you're just joking with us." He's like, "No, if that goes off and you see another one, like, don't move at all. I will try to disarm it, and we'll keep going." But the level of intensity for that night was like so beyond anything, because we're like, okay, this is not like just scary, we get lost, whatever. We could die.
Yeah,
So
and not
they're
paranormal.
murdering people for the guide business?
For the
Literally,
guide
yep.
business. It's crazy.
But yeah, we had 2 home invasions within 36 hours, I guess. The first time the guy came in the middle of the night, about 2:30, 3 a.m., and our back door had this sensor on it, made a very signature noise. And if you live in your house, you know the noise is in your house. And for whatever reason, it just woke me up from a dead sleep, and I knew what I heard, and there's the only thing that would make that noise. So I kind of snaked my way out the hall and down to the top of the stairs, and when I hit the top of the stairs, I heard the dog growl, and the door closed back. So I knew that was somebody leaving. We have a huge fucking dog. Basically useless, but he did growl, and he made a very primitive noise. I was proud of him. And the guy didn't come in because of that. And I just went downstairs and kind of swept the ground floor, and then he was gone. I didn't want to freak my wife out, so I waited till the morning to tell her, and then we called the police. Of course, one of the neighbors got it on like a ring cam in the back alley, the guy leaving and going down the street, so I had a very clear view of him. And so for whatever reason, my wife and the kids, they had to go on down to where we actually live. I was working that week in Nashville, probably mixing a record or something, so I had to stay behind. And as a result of me being home alone that day, I was cleaning and working on a firearm I'd recently purchased and assembled. And so went to bed that night, locked everything up, and because they weren't home, I put the gun on the floor on a padded case next to the bed. So the next morning, It's like 7:15 a.m., like sun shining, neighbors going to work. I hear the back door open again. And I was like, this can't, what the fuck? Is that like the maid? Who would be here that early? And I guess out of paranoia or whatever reason, I grabbed that gun and just went to the top of the stairs to look. I still think it's the maid. And when I hit the top of the stairs and looked down the staircase, same guy, same clothes, just standing in my living room, rolling the cord up on my headphones. And I was like, well, all right. I was almost impressed. One, that he came back, but it was just like, I couldn't believe it was happening at this time. And so I started down the stairs on him very quietly. And I got about halfway down by the time he like turned and saw me. And I was looking through at his fucking head through a red dot, like a video game. I'll never forget that image of this guy, like, probably thinking he's about to die. And the back door was thankfully still open. The only thing I said to him was, what are we doing here, man? And I hit him with a strobe, which kind of like, probably to his brain he thought was the gun going off, because he kind of like seizured, and then I saw the adrenaline spike. And he turned and went out the back door and jumped clean off my fucking porch, like never hit a single step, and ran at the back gate. He had latched it. And I saw this on the video later. When he came in, he shut the back gate back. So he hit that back gate on a dead run, and just like blew it to hell. Latches and wood splinters flying, and then like took off down the alley.
I was very lost and very alone, and I was like on like day 6 or something of being lost. I don't remember. No, it wasn't that long of a solo. But I was lost and I was scared. And I was in a hammock.
How did you get lost?
Well, as soon as you leave the river, like you could literally walk 15 feet and then be like, I'm just going to come right back. And the jungle will like Blair Witch you. Because it's all green. So you just like think you know what you're doing. Just last week, I took people, I wanted to cross from one trail to another trail. And I was like, I'm a guide, I can do this. And I came back out on the same trail like a half hour later. And I was like, yep, that's what I meant to do. Let's go. And like, it happens to JJ all the time.
Really?
You cannot find your way in the
Do
jungle.
you use a compass?
Don't use a compass.
Why not?
Because actually, apparently some of the iron content in some of the saps in the trees pulls the needle. It doesn't work really well.
Even the trees are trying to trick you. Oh my God.
GPSs run out of batteries. It's like you really just, you have to learn your bushcraft. You have to learn how to navigate in the jungle, and it's like which is pretty much, you have to get just amazing at dead reckoning and remembering your course, because it's so dense that like we play with people. We go, go see if you can go from here to there. And it's like, they can't go there. They can't do that as soon as you leave the river. So like I had gone out on this solo, gotten lost, gotten scared, and then been like, oh shit, what if I just like into the wilded myself? What if now I'm going to be the next kid that went and died in the Amazon? And like, I like slept in the hammock, but this is like as I was learning. So I didn't realize that the hammock that I had bought had a mosquito net on top, but the back was not mosquito proof, so they could stick through. So my back was being destroyed by mosquitoes as I'm trying to sleep. And like a couple of nights of that. And so I finally fall asleep, and I wake up in the middle of the night and I hear breathing right next to my face. And I like wanted to turn my headlamp on, and I just hear like right here. Like I could feel her breath. And I was like 6 inches away from a jaguar's face. And she just like, and then left. And she just came in. She wanted to see what that was. She was like, you're not going to move. That's what you're not going to do. She growled like right into my ear. And then later on.
Wow. And they vary in colors and the spots and everything, right? Like some of them are much darker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, actually somebody recently was like, where do you see panthers? And I went on this whole thing of like, a leopard or a jaguar, just like you can have albinos, you have a melanistic one. Yeah.
Wow.
So like people would call that a panther, but a panther's not a real. There's no animal that's a panther. It's like
right.
a Kleenex. It's like it's just another name for it.
That is so beautiful.
But a black
Look
jag.
at that thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Yeah, in South India they have the black leopards.
What an amazing looking animal.
Look at the muscles.
Yeah, it's an amazing killing machine. And so humans don't get taken out by them?
I can only really speak for our region of the Amazon, but I haven't even heard a story about it.
Really?
Like no one. Our jags are just, we have like record numbers of jags. Like I think they're listed as near threatened, and we have like some of the strongest remaining jaguar populations in the world. It's incredible.
And you
they're-
barely see them.
We barely see them. The last one I saw was 2 years ago, and some people like go their whole lives without seeing them.
Really?
Yeah. Well, because people walk off into the jungle and they don't realize people. It's so funny living in the wild and seeing people show up there, and it's like people come and they're like they smell like shampoo and cologne and bug spray and deodorant, and they're just like, if to an animal that has such better senses than we do, they might as well just have like sirens on them, and like you are this shiny glittering foghorn of attention in the jungle, and like every animal's going to run away from you. And so people are always like, how come you go out and you see so much stuff? And it's like, I only shower in the river. I live out in the jungle. I smell like they do. Like I'm out there for weeks, and it's like I'm not going and like shampooing my hair. It's like, and so like to these animals, like they know when you're coming. Like a jag's just going to be like, oh, there's a human there.
Do you wash with soap when you wash in the river?
I do use a biodegradable soap. You have to keep your skin clean or else you just get infections. But like for the most part, like my clothing, everything, like I don't use anything that's scented because of that, because I want to be out there and just blend in. And that's whether I'm out in the field with elephants or whether you're out in the, in Africa or India or whether you're in the Amazon. I want to be sort of like included. I want to blend in. And so like not that long ago, I was checking a camera trap and I thought it was we had students at our research station at the time, and I heard like the leaves going like and it was like September, so the jungle was dry. And I turned around and I was going to scare this person because I was going to be like, who walks that loud in the jungle? Like, you have no respect. And I turned around with my finger up, and this jag walked right by me on the trail and just went, what's up? And just kept walking. And I was like, finger up. And I was like, okay.
Oh, Lord.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe.